When we talk about part 5, we always have to take into consideration the most outstanding thing about part 5 in general, and that is the characters. And we talk about the characters of part 5, especially the main characters of part 5, we cannot ignore what we mostly would consider is the best character in part 5. And I'm talking about none other than Bruno Buccellati. One of the most important things about characters in general is their introduction, and Bruno Buccellati's introduction is nevertheless great. We see him in the early chapters of part 5 when he is ordered to talk to Giorno. Bruno takes this role of a character who is colder in this sense because he's during his job time. But nevertheless, Giorno's interaction with Bruno proves that despite Bruno being this person of mafia and this person who works in a big organization that pretty much rules over Italian mafia and the Italian underworld, just proves that Bruno in general is something special, something that I wouldn't consider to be a traditional part of that group. Essentially, I'm talking about Bruno's maximalist optimism. I mean, we gotta hand it to Giorno in this case, because despite me saying that, Giorno is not just a kid who Bruno meets. Giorno is the kid. Because of Giorno, Bruno finally gets pushed to his reserved ideology of saving the city that he really dearly worked to, or enforced in a way, to be there. So what is the point on there? The point is to save the city from the boss himself, because the whole existence of Bruno and his backstory has a really strong connection with this decision Bruno made. In the backstory of Bruno, as we all know it, he is dealing with a divorce of his two parents that he likes them dearly. He either has to choose between his dad, who is pretty reserved man who's gonna stay alone in the town of Italy he's in, or either he's gonna go in the city with his mom. The obvious answer would be his mom, because after all, even his dad was expecting him to choose his mom. But surprisingly enough, he chooses his dad because he doesn't want to leave him alone. And that choice pretty much defines the entirety of Bruno's character. He's a character who essentially stands up for the person who cannot really stand up for himself. Not in a literal term, but more than when there is a case of Bruno choosing between someone strong and someone weak, almost every time Bruno will choose the one weaker. Because that's just the type of character Bruno is. Essentially, that choice leads to a lot of stuff, because Bruno not only has to stay with his dad, but to help him with his work and etc. Which, to everyone who has seen the episodes or read the chapters of Bruno's backstory, knows that this gets involved with the mafia, who beat Bruno's dad, who ends up in the hospital. And Bruno's dad, after ends up in a hospital, he gets attacked by the mafia, who Bruno has to defend them against. Thus, Bruno kills one of the mafias, which ends up in a really bad situation for him. So he has to join the gang to prevent him from going against the law, like directly. This decision basically pushes Bruno's life into a direction that he didn't really want to take originally. After that, Bruno shows the skill he has to be a leader of a small team. A small team he simply creates by being in the gang. Reminder, at this time Bruno still has his original thoughts about the mafia and about the mafia world in general, and how they are essentially bad, because when you know directly, Bruno is conflicted with helping other people, but at the same time he knows that the same drugs that they're being distributed to the people he needs to help and to get them away from are the same drugs that the gang he is joined in is providing to those people. It's a really twisted situation that Bruno joins in, and he has no real choice in it. He stays as part of the gang without disturbing anything in it. The little mini gang Bruno forms, that we usually call it as the Bruno's Passion team, which consists of the main characters of part 5 and later Giorno and Giovanna, shows Bruno's humble for friends, in this case for the gang. Through all the missions they have, they always are really connected to each other. Bruno's character really gets a twist when he goes with Giorno and Giovanna, which basically sets up the entire story of part 5. After that, we have to know two things. First of all, Bruno only accepts Giorno at first and sees where that is going. Bruno would never risk the life of his teammates or any people around just to simply get a chance and defeating the boss. But Bruno's humanity is shown at the scene when Bruno has to deliver Trish. Trish obviously gets attacked by the boss, because that's the entire point of that. And that triggers Bruno to the point that he basically becomes the traitor he's known for. He goes against the boss orders in order to save Trish, but at the same time he has a deep thought about everything that has happened, which is pretty much really cool for a character like Bruno. Him opposing the boss is pretty much an iconic scene for many reasons. The first and the most apparent reason is because no matter what Bruno explains to the boss is never gonna understand how he feels, and that's how we even get the iconic line, "You don't understand how I feel." Bruno is just godly in a sense, because everything he does is not only justifiable, but his morality throughout the entire story just makes him not only the most likable character in his part, but also just makes him, honestly, just like in simple words, a masterful written character. Also, I shall just mention the simple fact that the relationship between Bruno and every single member of the team is just magnificent to see, because originally speaking, I spoke on these relationships individually on each character analytics I made for other members of the team, but at the same time I should just mention that there. As well as I should mention that every single fight after that or before that Bruno is included on, Bruno always knows how to, and he's the smart individual of the group. Individually speaking, I would consider Bruno as the greatest leader out of them. At the same time, I should probably mention Bruno's stand, Sticky Fingers, which in my opinion is an amazing stand simply because it is borderline between being a really broken stand which can do a lot to utility and everything, to a stand which is pretty normal to have. But in my opinion, what makes the stand absolutely amazing is the usage that Bruno does throughout the story of part 5. The most important moment in Bruno's character's journey is probably the moment when he loses his life, which is in the King Crimson arc. Simply, journey allows him to be part of this world and his soul to be part of his lifeless body, which is pretty apparent as a scheme in the entirety of part 5 until at the final arc when we get Silver Chariot Requiem, when everybody is forced to leave their souls from the body and switch to another character's body. So essentially at this time, Bruno Buccellati's body is dead. So when his soul switches back at the end of this Silver Chariot arc and at the end of the final of part 5, we see the death of Bruno Buccellati, which not only is the most symbolic moment religiously speaking as well as symbolically speaking in the entirety of part 5, but it's also one of the best choreographed moments in the entirety of part 5 anime in my opinion, which basically shows Bruno Buccellati, one of the main characters, ascending to heaven while his friends are seeing them from the ground, which is absolutely heartbreaking to see, but also just simply one of the greatest moments in all of JoJo animated so far. Thank you Bruno Buccellati, an amazing character who in my opinion will always stand out as one of the best Jobros we have in the entirety of the series. I absolutely love Bruno Buccellati, one of my favorite characters of all time and the best part 5 character. Thank you to a legend. I mean, honestly, like I can speak a lot more about Bruno's because the simplicity he's added to his characterization and everything he adds to the simple moods Araki create of him. Like we have business Bruno, we have friendship Bruno, we have decisive moment Bruno, then we have emotional Bruno. There are a lot of depth into Bruno, which in my opinion it's for an absolute amazing character. I will always remember Bruno even years and years and years after this video. I absolutely adore him, so just you know, he's my favorite character ever. When I was making this video, my big realization was that nothing that I can simply say about Bruno not only has been said already, but my personal connection with him are so deep. You know when you love something so much to the point that you can simply just struggle pointing into words, because in my opinion, like when you're reading an essay or something, you're just reading what you been writing to the point that you almost think that, oh well, I should have wrote something else in it, because the feelings you have for that when it's personally connected to you will always be like, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. That's how I feel about this video specifically. That's how a lot of I feel about all of my videos, to be honest, but this is specifically because Bruno is like my boy. So maybe I will look back at this video thinking it's just bad, but honestly Bruno is like amazing. And now seeing part 5 and it's just gonna be sad. Like that's all it's gonna be, just sadness. I don't see anything happy about it. Oh well, at least we got part 5. Like for us JoJo fans have been waiting so long, we got part 5. I got a lot of things coming for this channel. I promise maybe in the couple of days I will announce all of them, and I just hope everyone is having a nice time enjoying the ending final of JoJo and just in overall having a nice life. And if you're not, then you can just work for the future of that life being great. And I just love every single one of you, subscribed or not, watching or not, liked or disliked, comment or not. I just love all of you. Thank you for everything. Mwah.